Welcome back to the shop. I'm Andrew and this is Davidson Crafts, and today we're going to be getting a little fancy. As you saw in the thumbnail, we're going to be making a ring holder. For that, we're going to be using some of this maple burl as well as some resin. I haven't quite decided on what color yet, but we'll decide when we get there. The first thing we need to do is go ahead and get this cut so it will fit inside of our mold here. So let's head over to the bandsaw. Okay, now that we have our burl all cut, it's time to go ahead and put it into our mold. For our mold, we're going to be using this container here, and if you've seen some of my resin videos before, you've probably seen one of these. This is just a hot chocolate container, and they work great. The resin doesn't stick to it. You don't have to use any mold release, and when the time comes, you're able just to peel it off and throw it in the trash. And it's a great way to reuse something that would have been in the trash anyways. So we don't want our burl to float up, so we're going to go ahead and put just a dab of hot glue on the bottom to stick it to the bottom of the mold before we put in our resin. We're going to go ahead and let that set up, and while that's setting up, we're going to go ahead and get everything ready to start mixing our resin. Okay, we've got everything prepped for our resin, so it's time to go ahead and start mixing. I did finally decide on the colors I wanted to do for this. We're going to be using this Pearl X dark brown as well as this Pearl X apple green. I'm hoping that we're going to be able to keep them separate. We'll see what happens when we get everything in there, but let's go ahead and get to mixing. All right, it's the next morning now, so let's go ahead and get this out of the pot and see how it looks. Okay, to get this out of the mold, we're just going to peel this off like a can of biscuits. So we'll find the seam and then just rip it off from there with a pair of pliers. All right, after a quick visual inspection, things look pretty good. So let's go ahead and find our centers. So I've had a couple of questions about the negative rake carbide cutters that I use, and so I figured I would just show that real quick. This is just the standard carbide cutter that comes with it, and what we're going to do is take that one off and replace it with the negative rake cutter. So you can see the difference here with the negative rake is that you have this bevel that points downwards on the top edge. And what that does is create a little bit less aggressive cut and works really, really well when you're turning things like resin. Now we've got our negative rake cutter on and we're ready to start turning. Well, that totally sucked. Let me clue you in to what I was doing here. So when making a ring holder, typically what I do is remove this section here, just take it all the way off on the lathe, and leave a post coming up out of the middle. Then we can make kind of a little cup at the bottom to set pieces of jewelry, and then rings can slide on the post. So instead of removing this whole section here and just turning it all off, I thought it'd be fun to try and save this resin and wood and create a little kind of donut paperweight thing. And so as I was cutting that off, of course, I had a catch and I busted off our center post. That causes a problem because the whole purpose of this is to make a ring holder. And so I was looking at the piece as a whole and seeing if there was a way that I can still use this piece. And I think what we're going to try and do is remove this little bit of post here, create a little tenon on this side so that we can hold it with the chuck, and then flip the whole thing over and then create the post on this side. I think that we can make something work with that. So let's go ahead and get this on the lathe and see if we can make this ring holder happen. All right, let's get this thing flipped around and see if this is going to work. Well, that freaking sucked. Again, we had another fail. I didn't remember how deep we had gone in on this side, and we ended up blowing through on this side as we were carving out this section here. But I refuse to give up on this project. So what we're going to go ahead and do is take this piece of maple and use it to make our post for this. So let's go ahead and get this prepped, get it on the lathe, and bring this project back to life. Okay guys, so what we went ahead and did was match up these two diameters to this here and this one here so that this can then slide on nice and tight, right like that. So what we're going to do now is go ahead and get that glued in place so then we can start shaping and finishing this off. So for the glue, I went ahead and used some 5-minute epoxy on the inside edge. And then what I did was prep with some thin CA glue along the wood and then along this edge here, just to make sure everything was really nice and tight where everything met up. Well guys, as you know, we've had more than a couple of fails on this, but I think it's time to go ahead and start sanding. We're going to start at 220 grit and go all the way up to 600. Then we're going to start wet sanding and go all the way up to 12,000. All right, we've got things sanded up to 12,000, so we're going to go ahead and add our polish. All right, our top was looking a little sad, so I grabbed a broken piece of our resin and added a little topper here, and I think that'll help tie it in. One thing that I noticed is that our two maples here are not matching up. The color is quite different and it just makes the whole piece look a little off. And I'm really trying to save this piece. And so I'm gonna do something I normally wouldn't do with such pretty wood, but we're gonna go ahead and try and stain these to match each other's color. So let's go ahead and get to it. Well, there you have it, guys. Our ring and jewelry holder is all complete. You know, we had a few bumps on this project and it's not exactly as we planned. But, you know, looking at everything we were able to do and overcome with this project, I'm gonna say that I'm happy with how this thing turned out. We were able to get these matching a little bit better so everything flowed more, and we were able to save a piece that otherwise would have ended up in the trash. We're gonna go ahead and end it here with some close-up shots. If you like this video, let me know by clicking on the like button. And if you haven't subscribed to the channel, be sure to do so. Thanks so much for watching the video, guys, and we'll see you on the next one. Thanks for checking out the video. I don't know what to say. I hope I'm on camera. I'm not. Okay. And, yeah, I mean, it freaking works, right? So for the glue, what I went ahead and... I can't talk.
Is this thing running?